Hey, good morning, and how are you guys doing? We're back with revising on Echoes of the Cosmic Veil. Um, Honestly, it's about to be 5 a.m., and so I'm still a little bit waking up, but I think we're pretty good. Let me go ahead and get our stream up real quick, and we'll get right on to stuff for the morning. I hope you guys are all kicking butt in your own, world and stuff, knocking out big things. I'm doing pretty awesome myself. Hold on one second. Let me get up chat all the way, and we'll get right into stuff. So when we last left off, Sam's friends had basically dumped him onto a random planet out of an escape pod because the crew of the ship, or the rest of the crew of the ship, was going to probably kill him. Well, for killing crew members and for the fact that he was infected with the Zarkran's virus that makes him dangerous to everybody around him. I left my coffee, sadly, on the counter. I'm going to grab it real quick and then we will start writing. I do want to thank you guys very much for showing up, and that's the start of it. Okay, got coffee, and we are good. Let me adjust. Boom. Okay, so we know that he just dropped onto the planet, and we know it's supposed to be dark still. Because I mentioned in the last chapter it was night, still at night, planet still at night, right? As the smoke cleared, the hatch opened and the fresh, damp air rushed in. I took a breath and climbed out of the pod onto the soft, muddy ground below. The forest was alive with sounds, informing me that I was not alone. The air was cold and everything was wet from the storm that had just passed. I made my way through a forest, through I made my way through the dark forest for around a half hour looking for a good shelter while heading in the direction of a lake I had spotted during the descent onto the planet. Okay. Okay, I made my way through the dark forest for around a half hour looking for a good shelter. Okay, don't worry, I'm going to just move this around. Okay, the air was cold and everything was wet from the storm that had just passed. Okay, not waiting for morning to break, I headed in the direction of the lake that I had spotted during my descent onto the planet. I made my way through the dark forest for around a half hour, looking for a good location to build a shelter. That doesn't sound great. I made my way through the dark forest, for around a half hour, looking for a good location to build a shelter. To build a shelter. Get rid of this. I made my way through the dark forest for around a half hour looking for a location to build a shelter. As I made my way to the edge of the forest near the lake, I could hear a commotion and the sound of struggle ahead. Unsure of what I would be walking into, I snuck slowly closer until I was able to see a group of tribesmen. They were dressed in primitive furs and had a captive led by ropes as she struggled to get free. A couple of them were carrying laser rifles, which seemed out of place against the backdrop of their primitive clothing. The rest were brandishing crude wooden spears, the spear tips tarnished with hues of brown and lime green. The AI instantly recognized the metal as bronze. The man leading the procession wore a large jeweled crown with an ornate snake on it and red robes with black lifts. The woman, though not elf or human, was humanoid and not that different from humans, but with some ridges on her forehead. She was dark-haired and seemed to be from the same species as species of humanoids as the tribesmen. They led her to a stone altar at the edge of the lake, where they tied her down. The man wearing the robes and crown, let's leave that, then stepped forward facing the lake, yelling strange sounds and performing hand gestures, as two other men lit incense at the base of the altar. The ceremony only took a few minutes before they scurried away. Soon after they were out of sight, I noticed a group of tribesmen at the edge of the forest, on the far side of the lake. There were 4 of them altogether, as they finally fully emerged from the forest. After spreading out and cautiously looking around, they started making their way to the woman on the altar. She was relieved to see the man. As they moved closer to the altar, with spears gripped in hand, one of the men took out a knife and began cutting the ropes binding her legs. I was not sure what was going on at first until the woman began to panic, trying to free herself. Then I saw the creature emerging from the lake. The girl was to be sacrificed, and the men were now desperately trying to free her. The creature was a chimeric abomination. The head and body was like that of a large dog. It has 6 legs with webbed feet, scales like a serpent, 4 tentacles that protruded from its neck, and a long barbed tail covered in quills. Good morning, by the way. I hope you guys are all doing awesome. Make sure I got chat where I can actually see what's being said. Okay, we got it. The abominations were remnants created by the horrors, not to be taken lightly. No matter what twisted form they had, they were created for one purpose, and that was to sow the seeds of pain and destruction. As it locked on the men's As its eyes locked on the men trying to steal its offering, it let out a large screeching sound, which was accompanied by a wave of dreadful energy. I could feel the fear and sorrow contained within the field of energy it was now emitting, washing over everything. I had to compose myself, reinforced by the unwavering thoughts coming from the AI. I watched as fear struck the tribesman and the woman. One of the men dropped his spears in panic and ran away. The other 3 steadied themselves, stepping forward and readying their spears as the girl worked to free herself the rest of the way. The tribesman made the first move, spreading out in an attempt to work around the creature, but the abomination was ready. As 2 of the men tried to draw the abomination's attention, the third lunged in for an attack. His spear quickly grabbed and flung away by one of the creature's tentacles, while at the same time the creature flicked its tail, spraying the man with the barbed quills. Agony instantly struck him, as I watched the poison rush through, blistering his skin as it spread. Within seconds, she was on the ground, gasping for air and flailing around. The remaining two men now seemed resigned to their fate as fear took hold of them. As I watched the creature move in an unnatural way, I knew I had to stop it. Slowly, I crept forward, readying the plasma rifle and taking aim. Then, as it moved forward, and the woman was screaming out, I fired, striking the creature in the side. The creature lurched back, letting out a large screech, then focusing its gaze fully on me. As the abomination began to run at me in full stride, I took aim again. The first shot missed. Instantly, the AI compensated and supplied adjustments. I fired two more shots, which both found their target. One shot destroyed one of its front legs, and the other struck it in the chest. The creature was still breathing, but was dying. As I walked toward the group of tribespeople, they had freed the girl, but were clearly afraid as they huddled together, motioning for me to stay back. Suddenly, the creature flicked its tail at me, releasing some of the barbs like flying darts. One of the barbs hit me in the leg and I turned, firing three more shots into the creature, finishing it off completely. I could feel the quill pulse as it pushed some kind of poison into my leg. I wasted no time instantly ripping the quill out, its barbs tearing my flesh. I could feel the nanites already getting to work, and was relieved the pain in my leg was not worse. I could see the tribespeople were confused and afraid of me as they raised their spears and began backing away. They were speaking, but the AI was still working to translate their language. I checked the wounds on my leg and noticed that the bleeding had already stopped. As the tribesmen were approaching the edge of the forest, they began yelling and pointing. Their attention focused on the edge where the other group of tribesmen had gone. I could tell they were pointing and yelling was clearly a warning. As they ran off. I turned to see the tribesmen who had tied up the girl returning. It seemed they were still working to understand what had happened. They were moving out of the forest, spreading out across the lake shore. Suddenly, as they spotted the slain abomination, they became enraged. The two men carrying the laser rifles seemed not to know how to aim them correctly, but began firing them in my direction. I fired back a few shots, taking down one of the fast-moving men before fleeing in the direction the tribesman and the woman had gone. I made it into the woods, but the tribesmen pursuing me were gaining. My leg was wounded, but not giving me much trouble, and the adrenaline now flowing through me seemed to be helping me stay ahead. For about 20 minutes it seemed I might have lost them. Then two of the tribesmen came out of the forest rushing me. I managed to get off a couple shots, killing one as he ran towards me, but the other was fast and managed to drive his spear through the upper thigh of my leg. As he released his grip on the spear, I stepped back to draw his knife, giving me just enough time to shoot him dead. Okay. I could hear more men approaching, so in desperation I ripped the spear out of my leg, leaving a large wound. The nanites were working as fast as possible to do their job, and the wound was not bleeding. I managed to get away from the area, away before the tribesmen arrived, using the spear as a walking stick. I could hear the rage in their screams as they found the bodies of their comrades. I moved as quickly as possible, but they were gaining on me. Quickly, I took position, using a large boulder to defend my flank, readying myself to fire as soon as the large group closing on me came into sight. As soon as the large group closing on me came into sight, I knew I would not be able to run. Okay, so that needs perioded there. Okay. Quickly, I took position using a large boulder to defend my Quickly, I took position using a large boulder to defend my rear, readying myself to fire as soon as the group closing on me came into sight. I knew I would not be able to outrun them. As they rushed at me, I was able to shoot down the first four just in time. Okay. As they rushed me, as they emerged from the forest rushing me, I was able to shoot down the first four just in time to spot the man in the red robes. My movement my movements were very fast. My movements were fast, but before I could get an aim on him, the man in the red robe released a surge of dark arcane energy. It rippled and snapped through the air, striking me. The energy boost powerful, leaving burns everywhere it touched and blasting me as its immense blast knocked me backwards. I slammed into the rocks. The last thing I recalled was the back of my skull cracking. The blow was severe enough that I would have wait. The blow was severe enough that it would have been lethal to anyone not in my condition. I found myself remaining conscious within the AI as it worked using the nanites in a desperate attempt to repair my body, mainly the damage to my skull. The nanites were felling, though, which triggered the survival mechanism within the virus. Suddenly, the virus began working, with the AI helping the nanites repairing my body. Okay, so this is where we have him out. Obviously, that took us almost no freaking time to get through this morning. We only have 25, 26, and 27 left to revise. So we're literally down to the last 3 chapters. So that means, honestly, we'll be rolling this out this week. Finished. I'm hoping that the people proofreading it can catch up to where we are really quickly. I don't think that they're actually taking very long. They're doing a great job. And so I should have this proofreaded caught up within the next 5 days, let's hope, right? And so we should be able to or go to print and publish this on Barnes and Noble, I think within 10 days. Let's just be honest. I think within 10 days we can have this fully published. I want to thank you guys for waking up, hanging out, having coffee this morning. I do want to say I hope you guys have a great day. Outside of that, enjoy yourself and peace and very best wishes.